Hi, I'm Gabriela Houston, the author of upcoming Slavic fantasy, The Second Bell.
And I'm Caroline Hardaker, the author of Composite Creatures, an upcoming dystopian fiction as well, coming out in April.
So this is Bookish take when we talk about our writing process from the initial ideas to the scary days of submitting. And in this video, we're going to talk about writing a first draft.
So last time we were talking we touched on it a little bit towards the end, our processes for outlining. I know, Gabriella, you were saying that you don't do tons, you kind of wait, and then once you're about a third of the way through the story, then you know the characters well enough, you know the world well enough to start planning what might happen in the following act. But I was just wondering, do you tend to pause at that point once you've starting to get an idea of what's coming? Will you pause and then start to outline, or do you carry on writing and try and keep up with it with your outline, if you know what I mean? Do you do the two at once, or do you take a break?
So at the moment where I feel like, yes, I do have an idea for where this novel is going to go, from here on, I tend to just sit down and spend like 15-20 minutes just writing bullet points of, okay, so this is where I want it to go. This is what's going to happen in the middle. This is where it's going to lead. This character is going to do that. And then it's like, the more ideas you write down, the more ideas you get. Yeah. So I might have an idea for like a sense of the direction. And if I've made the decision, okay, now I know enough about the characters to do this, then I will literally write what I know. And then the ideas sort of pop up from there. Because it's like, a story will be generally quite linear in my case. So if something happens, then the natural solution to that particular problem or that situation will be that. I don't necessarily write like massive detail of outline, which for some people is quite stressful, right? Because they don't know what we're going to do, and it can be stressful if you feel like you've written yourself into a corner. But it's also exhilarating on some level. I find it really. I mean, if your main character shows up with nothing but like a Toblerone chocolate and sombrero in a room with no doors, then and you're thinking like, if you can figure out a way from there, that's an achievement. That gives you a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. I think I agree, and I also think there's also something quite freeing about the first draft, because we'll talk in the next one about editing and second drafts. And I know my process for that blows a lot of people's minds, mine included.
It is insane. Save it for later. Save it for later.
Yeah, I'm not going to say
what the insanity of your process deserves its own show.
I really want to stop doing it, but one day I might. But I think knowing that I have that in front of me for the second one kind of makes me think it doesn't matter so much with my first draft. I just need to get the bare bones of a story there, and it'll constantly change like throughout my writing. I don't do super detailed outlines. I have a friend who writes sci-fi, he writes speculative stuff, he does RPG lit kind of things as well, and his outlines are so detailed. It's like a synopsis. Basically, he does do a synopsis before he's written the thing. And he sticks to it. He sticks to it really well. I could not do that at all, because again, it's like a process of discovery as you go through. And for me, the ending, particularly, I don't always have a very clear idea of the end at all. And I think that's absolutely fine, because you don't know everything about the world before you're immersed in it. You don't know what the characters are going to do. You don't know what would surprise a reader at that point as well. So I know with Composite Creatures, the first ending was completely different to the ending that actually is in the finished book. But that was to be expected. And I sort of quite like that idea, actually, that I don't know where it's going to go. It makes it a lot more real for me as well, I guess. How long does it take you to write a first draft, out of curiosity?
it it varies. I have written a book in like 2 months, and I've written a book in like 4 months. It really depends. And sometimes you write the first 2 pages and then you leave it because you're doing other projects, and then you go back to it. So does it count like an extended period of time? It's hard to say. I mean, I try when I'm actually writing something, I try to kind of commit to writing every day, and I tend to do. I mean, in COVID times, I have started doing this thing where I do Zoom calls most days, like 5-6 times a week, with my friend who's also a writer, and we basically just have each other's faces hovering in the corner of the screen while we write, and it really keeps us honest and it keeps us motivated. And it's so easy under lockdown to sort of lose that motivation and lose that drive, and it really helps if you know that someone is waiting for you at 9:30 or at 9 o'clock, and you have to log in. It will really help. But I was wondering, so not to take away from the editing portion of a discussion, but when you write your first draft, if you feel like, if you, I don't know, are 2/3 in, and you think that, oh, this new development really changes the dynamic between those two characters earlier in the book, do you go back to sort of fix it, or do you take a note of it and like fix it in like a later draft, or do you just go in a linear way, or?
It depends how big it is. So if it's quite small, I will just make a note of it, and then I'll continue writing as if I fixed it, and then I'll just make a massive note to do it in when I do the second draft, which we'll talk about next time. But if it's a really big thing, I think I would go back, but I would try not to do too much, because when I do a first draft, I know a lot of people who edit as they go. So they'll write 3 chapters, and as they're writing the 4th one, then they might go back and edit the first 3 to make it align with the direction that they're going in. I don't do that at all. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I just like to plow on and keep going. It's almost like watching a film in my head, in that if you're watching a film and you keep pausing it, or you keep rewinding and watching certain bits, it sort of loses its basis in reality for me. I can't suspend disbelief anymore. Like playing a computer game, if the more times you lose or you die or whatever, and then you have to go back to the previous save point, it's sort of, it's a bit, I'm out of it now, I'm out of that world. So I try and keep plowing ahead regardless, just making a lot of notes, and a lot of notebooks and a lot of pin boards. I'm quite old school, so I have pin boards.
It's like the kind of serial killer thing, with things linked with red threads, and
I should have had them here. Like, it does look a little bit like I'm some sort of either on Crime Watch from behind the scenes, or what, like an amateur sleuth. But yeah, it's the only way I can do it. So
it's really, I think people sort of approach it in different ways, and I think like for me it really depends. If it's just like it needs a scene where it's fleshing out a relationship between like the protagonist and someone else, then I can leave it for a second draft. But if I've had a couple of situations in different books where I have, I don't know, 20 pages in, I have suddenly realized it's in the wrong like point of view. Or another book I was writing, and the character had 2 uncles, and I realized, you know what, like I can either make 2 very flat characters, or I can combine their conflicting points of view and create something a bit more 3-dimensional that also doesn't take up as much of a plot time as the original idea. And then I have to go back and change it immediately, because I have essentially taken 2 characters and created something new. And if I don't get it right the first time round, the other things might need too much sort of tweaking later. So
Mm-hmm.
that will be things that are kind of feel, you know, the changes that completely change the feel of the book. Like, you know, is it in third person or first person, or is it, or, you know, who talks sort of in the first 3 chapters, like those things. It creates the atmosphere of the book, and it also changes how I see the characters. So if I plow ahead just trying to keep it in my mind, I won't be able to really focus on that.
That makes sense. So it's sort of, I suppose it depends on the nature of the story, really, what works. You see, with mine, with Composite Creatures, anyway, it's it is a kind of linear book, but it's all being told by one person, so it's almost okay to have things incorrect or go wrong, because that's the nature of memory. And with me, that's part of the interest in writing. I quite often seem to write from first person just because I'm really interested in how people skew their own past or convince themselves of things that might not have happened or have happened. So as long as I keep notes, I feel like I can, maybe I'm a bit of a struggling actor, I don't know, but it means I can get into character and I can think like, in this case, Nora does. And it sort of sits in my head a bit better. I feel like I've got a better memory for what I've written, even if I want to change stuff, when it's in first person than third person. I'm not sure why that is. It's a bit of a mystery. Yeah. Do you set yourself, because I do this when I'm writing a first draft, do you set yourself targets every day for how much to write?
Depends. In pre-COVID times, I would, like, I kind of, in a writing session, I would tend to go to a cafe or something, and I would expect to write at least like 1,000 words or 1,500 words. At the moment, I'm trying to be a little kinder to myself.
Oh, that's good.
And honestly, I can, I mean, I've been, the books I'm writing, the book I'm writing now, and the book I was kind of started writing a couple of months back, they're a bit more experimental for me. So they're a bit more of a challenge. So it doesn't go as fast as the ones I have written previously. And that's fine, because at this point, I have time. You know, nothing can be submitted until a little while from now, because because of just the way that the industry works. So I'm good. So
I think I've felt a change in the last year as well. So I would always set, and I still do set targets really when I'm working on a project. So I think anywhere between, for me, 1,000 and 2,000 words a day. I have a full-time job as well, so often my writing is squished in the evening hours, like between about 6 and 8. Maybe a bit. That's my usual writing time. It's the time
1 and 2,000 is a lot, actually.
It's decent. I mean, that's not the case when it comes to the subsequent drafts, but with first draft, and I'm not really caring too much about semantics or the exact words that I'm using, I can quite often pour out really quick. But I feel like last year, 2020, I started the pandemic by not being able to write very much. Like, I felt like all I wanted to do was just stare at my own knee most of the time. I didn't know what to do. And then I think, despite having more time to do it, as in didn't have any plans in the evenings and the weekends.
Nobody has any plans anymore. Yeah.
No, nobody has plans. It was still a strain, but by the summer, I thought, no, I'm gonna take advantage, because I'll never have this much time again. And it was probably partly therapy, to be honest, just to give myself some sort of sense of purpose.
It is. I think people need a project, and I think, you know, psychologically you need something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And because otherwise it's just, you know, even with the extra time, you just kind of fall apart a little bit. And when you can't plan for, like, seeing friends or going on a trip somewhere, it's just even more important to have a project that you kind of keep to, and that you sort of try to be disciplined about.
Yeah. And the feeling when you've finished it as well, the first draft, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a bit daunting because I remember with the first novel, finishing the first draft and going, yes, but then thinking, oh God, what now? Like, where do you even start?
And we're going to find out about what now in the next video.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us in this video. I hope it was interesting and sort of helpful to you. Next time we are going to talk about editing.
Yeah, and second drafts. Scary second drafts.
The scary second draft. All right. So bye. See you next time.
Bye.